one thing, and I know we touched a little bit on this the last time you and I talked, but I wanted to kind of go back into your military career a little bit. So going up through the ranks, and this is something that I really didn't have an opportunity to do whenever I was in the military because I dropped the ball on this whenever I was in. I didn't supervise anybody really. Didn't take advantage of any of the leadership stuff. Whereas you've gone the officer track and got to supervise people and do that kind of stuff. So we could maybe start with any kind of things that you've learned over the years or leadership takeaways or kind of what was your path? I mean, you had to start as a lieutenant, right? So you were at the platoon level. What was that like?
I started as a private.
So you started enlisted. And
I started as enlisted.
Okay.
And I mean, just to back that up a bit, my dad did 22 years in the 39th Infantry Brigade. Mm-hmm. And my dad was a very unconventional guy. Mm-hmm. But he used to bring me with him to drill, mm-hmm. or battle assembly, we call it now. Mm-hmm. And they would put camo on me. I had my little fatigues, and I could stand in formation. But mm-hmm. I also got to go out on, night patrols, raids, ambushes, all these things.
At what age?
Like 9 years old,
That's
8
awesome.
years old.
That's awesome.
And I remember one night we were set up in this linear assault, right? And they shoot a star cluster, mm-hmm. and I'm looking around at these guys. And I'm like, man, these are the most lucky guys in the world. And then I found out they got paid for it,
nice.
Right? And I'm like, this is for me, man. Mm-hmm. And all I ever wanted to be was a platoon sergeant, an infantry rifle company platoon sergeant. So mm-hmm. I joined the 39th Infantry Brigade at 17 and broke my back in a car wreck. So I was put out of the Army on medical discharge and later came in on a waiver, but I couldn't be in the infantry. I had to serve in a combat support role.
Okay.
So came back in and as a medical specialist, then I commissioned as a lieutenant. But what was always important for me was for whatever your job is, to realize that your number one role, whatever you're doing, is to support that E3, E4 on the ground who's closing with the enemy, right? To get them what they need. I'm in logistics now.
Right.
So I try to just influence people to remember that, because you get busy thinking about your job and your task and your counting boots or whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. But whatever you're doing, the main thing that you got to be doing is thinking about how you're supporting the warfighter. So Secretary Mattis has a saying, be brilliant in the basics. Mm-hmm. So, I think the cornerstones of my leadership philosophy is if you make sure that you're thinking more about your boss's career mm-hmm. and your soldiers' careers than you do your own. Mm-hmm. I've never thought about my own career, right? Mm-hmm. I think about making my boss successful, mm-hmm. and I think about making my soldiers successful, mm-hmm. and then in turn they take care of me, and it's worked out. And whatever that is, their home life, helping them make sure that they have a balance, mm-hmm. you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's just worked out for me. I mean, I think leadership is a kind of a natural thing. You're either born with it or you're not. But a lot of people, they get so concerned with their career that, they sabotage themselves. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Because I think that's going to guide a lot of things. You know, if you're thinking about the objective of what's actually going on. Your E2s and E3s, those are the guys who are doing the actual, like to make an analogy to the business world, that's your day-to-day operations, right?
Right.
And so if you think about communication, for example, if the end goal of the communication, what the end goal of the communication is for those guys to actually understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to, well, I got this message and I'm just going to regurgitate it to the next line down, because I'm the conduit from this level to that level. So what I do is I just regurgitate it down the conduit, instead of
the people below you are the people that are going to prop you up as well.
Absolutely.
And if you don't take care of them, if you're not taking care of your guys, like
100%.
How are they going to take care of you?
They won't. As a matter of fact, they'll sabotage you.
Yeah.
They'll sabotage you.
Yeah.
And and a lot of people see, any corporation resembles a pyramid, right? You got the boss, you got his captains, you got their lieutenants, and you got the workers. And everybody, and I think a lot of people have a misconception of thinking that that's how the pyramid works. Everybody works to serve the boss. But in my mind, I'm there to support my now my majors and my captains, so they can support their lieutenants, so they can support the NCOs to support who are, everybody's just supporting the guys who are actually making the sausage.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a line that you'll hear sometimes from people. They don't have to like it, they just have to do it.
Right.
And that is backwards.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember when I was training new managers, having to take that attitude and turn it around. And the military is actually an example where I think a lot of people think that that's how things work. But if you try to do you don't have to like it, you just have to do it idea, then when you leave the room, like I might say, yes, sir. I have to say yes, sir, right? To your face.
Right.
But once you leave, let's say it's filling sandbags, you know, and you say, I know you don't like filling sandbags, but you got to fill sandbags.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have to say yes, sir, right now, right? But when you leave, how hard am I going to fill sandbags?
Right.
You got to engage me in, I have to understand what the point of this is.
Yeah.
Like you have to find a way for me to know what the point of this is. You have to find a way to, as corny as this might sound or cheesy, I have to be inspired in some way, right?
Yeah.
For you to get full performance out of me. You care about me caring about it because you care about performance.
When I was serving in Hawaii, I heard this story. There's a beautiful church in Hawaii that's built out of coral. They shaped coral reef into blocks and walls and things. And the foreman, the boss, whatever, he comes up and he asks one of the workers, "What are you doing?" He's like, "My job sucks, man. I got to go out there and chip out this coral and drag it up on the beach." And he goes next, he says, "What's your job?" And he goes, "My job is it's terrible. I got to all day long be shaving and chipping this reef into squares." And he goes up to this other guy, he's like, "What's your job?" He's like, "Man, I'm building the most beautiful church in the world."
There
right?
you go.
Now this guy, he's just dragging blocks, but what he's really doing is, so if you can convey to the troops that, you know, you're not just filling sandbags, you're building a defense that's going to keep you and your brothers alive, and you're doing that to shape and win our nation's wars. Yeah.
There you go.
Not just fill these 50 sandbags.
Now I actually care about it.
Now you know what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can handle, was it Nietzsche that says you can handle any how if you have the right why.
If you know the why, you can handle any how.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I think is really important is that, and I learned this again, I lost it in the military world, but I learned it in the private sector. Leadership starts at the top. So if you see your troops not having that attitude, it's super easy to blame them.
Yeah.
So I learned this in an audit at the psych hospital that I worked at, this phrase, blame processes, not people. So it's super easy to blame people.
Sure.
And so if you see your troops with an attitude, the attitude you just talked about with the church in Hawaii, right? It's super easy to be like, oh, that person's got a bad attitude.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a bad troop, you know.
Right.
And but you are responsible for the culture.
Right.
That's your whole job.
100%.
If you're a lieutenant colonel, you don't fill sandbags, right?
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that is the part that I love the most about my job, is shaping the culture of an organization. I love it. I love coming into an organization and seeing the DNA of it, and then seeing the DNA 2 years later when I leave. You know what I mean? And seeing how you can rid, because it's really easy for toxicity to creep into the Army, because that is the place where you can just say, fill these sandbags, dirtbag.
Yep.
And the people don't have a choice. They can't quit. They can't leave. You know what I mean? So if you can really spread that why and shape the culture, I love it.
Yep.
It's my favorite part of what I do.
Yep. Yeah, culture is one of those things that it's subtle, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's invisible, you know. So if it's not written in the bylaws, you know, it's not overt. There's not rules that this is what the culture is.
Yeah.
But if you come in and start influencing it, it's super powerful.
Super
Nobody
powerful.
can see it, but it's so powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah.